Good evening. We're back with another episode of the LOTR LCG Progression Series. And tonight is a card review of Beneath the Sands Adventure Pack, which is the third of the Haradrim cycle. So let's take a look. The hero is Hirgon. 9 threat, 2214. After Hirgon quests successfully, place a Tactics ally from your hand. Play a Tactics ally from your hand, reducing its cost by 1 to a minimum of 1. Then you may raise your threat by 1 to give that ally +1 attack and +1 shields until the end of the round. Okay. 2214 are pretty bad stats. But he's providing cost reduction out of the Tactics sphere. Play a Tactics ally from your hand. So if you can quest successfully, you can get a cost reduction of 1 on an ally, but he won't be able to contribute to the quest this turn. So it's sort of like a mini Ent exhausting effect, which means a reduction in stats. You have to take some stats off of the ally, each ally that you play this way, which is going to negate the benefit of the cost reduction partially. Then you may raise your threat by 1 to give that ally +1 attack and +1 shields. Well, that's a decent effect. It does have a cost, though, of threat. I mean, overall, I wouldn't give this effect much weight at all in terms of what it provides for its cost. Reducing the cost of an ally by 1 is good, but not if it can't quest this round. Giving an ally +1 attack and +1 shields is good, but you can only do it on an ally that you played in a manner that prevents it from questing, and you have to pay 1 threat. There is no way in this world, for me, that this ability makes up for this hero's lackluster stats. I really can't see playing this hero much at all, if ever. The ability just doesn't add much value, given its limitations. It would add value if you could get cost reduction before questing, in addition to the 1 threat and the +1/+1, and I wouldn't consider that to be overpowered, so I'm not sure why the limitation. Except that it's off sphere, and it seems a little bit inconsistent in terms of card design concerning when we get punished for playing cards off sphere and when we don't, because some cards end up off sphere. Like, for example, Jubiar is a very good defender, which is off sphere, considering that's typically the role of Tactics, but he's still a very good card even for his cost. And there are a number of other examples I could come up with that are very good off sphere. And then you have cards like this where it seems like they're punishing you for playing off sphere. So anyway, I don't like cards that are overcosted or underpowered because they're off sphere, if that's the reason for this one, and I can't see myself getting much use out of this card. Stats are just too weak and the ability doesn't make up for it. Haradrim Spear, 2 cost attached to a Herod character, restricted. Attached character gets +1 attack. After attached character is declared as an attacker, it gets +3 attack for this attack. After the attack resolves, discard Haradrim Spear. So it gets +4 total, +1 if you don't use it to attack, so I guess that's for like battle questing or something like that. Then once you do, you get +3 more, so it's basically 2 cost for 4 attack, with a minor benefit in some situations. 2 cost for 4 attack is okay. It's 2 more than its cost. That's pretty typical, pretty standard for an event or a non-permanent effect. It is off sphere, off the sphere where you would typically see this. It's fine. It's adequate. It's useful in defeating certain specific challenges, but often it won't get much use. Or its use will be just adequate for its cost, but nothing that's going to win you the game or get you ahead or conquer the board or anything like that, stabilize the board or anything like that. So it's an adequate card, but not much else to say about it. I'm not a big fan of non-permanent effects, and this card doesn't do anything to change that. Hunting Party. 1 cost, play only if you control a unique character with the warrior trait and another one with the scout trait. After the players have committed characters to the quest, discard a non-unique enemy in the staging area. Then reveal an encounter card. Well, that's a pretty good effect. I mean, that's, well, except for the last part. Discarding a non-unique enemy in the staging area, it could be very strong. There's some very difficult to deal with non-unique enemies, and an encounter card could just be a dud. So I think I would play this in a deck with a warrior and a scout. Although it has it has a caveat that you have to leave an enemy in the staging area, but that's not as big a deal as leaving an enemy engaged with you. So leaving an enemy engaged with you is something you almost never want to do unless your deck is designed for it. But leaving a card in the staging area happens all the time, and then you could, if you've left it in the staging area, presumably it's because you couldn't deal with it in that turn. And therefore, getting rid of it is almost always going to be a good thing. Even if you have to reveal an encounter card, you may get a card that you can deal with in exchange for the one that you can't, or that you couldn't last round. So I like this card. I think it's good. Probably strong enough to mess around with at least and see how it plays. Now the problem being there aren't that many good scout heroes, so off the top of my head I can't think of a really elite one that's got a scout trait. Yeah, that's tough to see. In terms of heroes, there aren't a lot of really good ones that have the scout trait. So you're probably looking at playing a hero you normally wouldn't play in order to make this work. Or it's going to be less reliable if you're just using allies to fulfill the requirements rather than heroes. I'll keep this in mind for if any good scout heroes come out later. But right now, what do we got? Like Elfhelm, Idraean, Lanwin. Kind of things you don't really look twice. You just kind of look right past them. So the requirement that there be a scout trait is a big one. It's probably, this card is an effort to get more use out of scout heroes or scout cards in general. It's not enough to warrant putting a scout hero in the deck because they're kind of lackluster. So it's probably a good fun card for now until a really good scout hero comes out, if that ever happens. But that's not a limitation of the card, that's a limitation of the card's... Well, it sort of is, because it's a limitation of the card's requirements. And just the fact that there aren't that many good scout heroes that I can think of, unless I'm missing one. The Red Arrow, 1 cost, limit 1 per deck, attached to a Gondor hero. Attached hero gets +1 willpower. After attached hero quests successfully, add the Red Arrow to the victory display to search the top 5 cards of your deck for an ally and put it into play. That's good. I'd run it in a deck with a Gondor hero and a tactics. Well, Valor response, I missed that part. Well, obviously that doesn't make sense in low threat decks because the Valor response, if you remember, only applies when your threat's over 40. So that's the best time to get cost reduction is early game, and this isn't going to be an early game card. So this is a curious card. Very curious. It could be very good in a high threat deck. A deck that starts with its threat pretty high. That's its niche, I think. If you're running a Gondor hero, you're running Tactics Sphere, and you're running a deck that starts with its heroes at high threat, I would put this card in. However, I would not build a deck specifically to do that just to play this card, as it's a one-off in a deck. It's not going to be reliable enough to build a deck around. And I mean, we have a card that does something similar, like, well, this is card draw and putting it into play. Yeah, you can't build a deck around it because it's a one-off, but if you already are meeting the conditions, Tactics, Gondor Hero, and Higher Threat, I would run this in that situation. Keep Watch. It's a side quest, 1 cost, 6 progress to complete, limit 1 in the victory display. While this quest is in the victory display, each non-unique enemy engaged with the player gets -1 attack. That's pretty good. That's functionally not much different than giving all of your characters +1 shields, except that you can't siege quest with them. But in terms of the effect on battling, I mean, this is great. It's a strong contender for a side quest if you're running side quest synergy cards and you have access to Tactics Sphere. I like this card. That's a great card. I expect to see this in some very strong decks. Best card of the adventure pack so far, for sure, by a long shot. Like that card. Rider of Rohan, 3 cost, 2202. While a side quest is in the victory display, Rider of Rohan does not exhaust the quest. So in the past adventure packs, we've seen cards from the Lore Sphere and from the Tactics Sphere that had a benefit when you have a side quest in the victory display. This card is really, really good. So the reason I say that, it's a little bit undercosted for it, or a little bit understated for its cost. We'd like to get 3 willpower or 3 attack for 3 cost. However, what value can we put on this ability? Well, not exhausting to quest is worth 1 resource and a card, right? Because that's what we play for Light of Valinor. Not only that, but we're willing to take on the downside of having 2 duplicates of it in your hand later in the game that don't do anything. So it's probably worth even more than 1 resource and a card. So this card, you could say, while a side quest is in the victory display, it actually costs 2 and provides even more than 2 willpower and 2 attack. It actually costs 2 and draws a card, you could say, when a side quest is in the victory display. And given that we just saw a hero that can get a side quest in the victory display, or a side quest in your hand to start the game, and the general strength of side quests in this cycle, Keep Watch, The Storm Comes, there was one other one that's really good that draws a card, an additional card every round. So you might actually want to play 2 of those, or even 3 of them, in a deck with side quest synergy. This is a very, very strong card. I would run this in every deck with access to Spirit and that's playing a side quest. And you might even design a deck around side quest synergy with your allies, because this is very, very strong. The best of the side quest synergy allies so far. Not only do you get 2 willpower, but you also could get 2 attack, either or, for basically 2 cost, and it draws a card while a side quest is in the victory display. I mean, functionally, that's how we're valuing it. That is very, very strong. These last 2 cards have both been very, very strong. The side quest and the Rider of Rohan. Fireside Song, 2 cost, attached to a Hobbit hero, limit 1 per hero. Attached hero gets +1 willpower for each song attached to it. Well, this is a fun card, but I have not yet to see anything that makes me think a song deck will be good. So I see this as a fun card. A fun Hobbit card. You could make something thematic, perhaps, but not a good card. What would it take to make it good? I mean, with 2 songs on a hero, it's okay. With 3, it's good. Celebrian Stone on Aragorn gives 2 willpower and access to another sphere, and that doesn't see a lot of play, even when we are playing Aragorn. You don't always put that in a deck. So 2 costs for 2 willpower is okay, but nothing exceptional. 2 costs for 1 willpower is not good. 2 costs for 3 willpower is okay, but how often do you get 2 songs on a hero? In a normal deck, you'd have to build a deck around it, and I don't think that deck would be very good. So it's a fun card. Dunedain Lookout, 2 cost, 1/1/1. Discard Dunedain Lookout to cancel the when revealed effects on an enemy just revealed from the encounter deck. Well, it's understated for its cost, so you're relying on that ability, and that's a limited ability. Only applying to an enemy just revealed. It's weaker than other ways to cancel when revealed effects, and I'm pretty sure the reason is because it's off sphere. So like the hero Hergon, we're back in this adventure pack to cards that are off sphere being underpowered. This is one of them, and therefore I'm not likely to play it, because I don't like cards that are underpowered because they're off sphere. Dowdy Ranger, 1 cost attached to a hero, limit 1 per hero. Attached hero gains the Ranger trait. After you play Dowdy Ranger from your hand, draw a card. So it's a placeholder. Does nothing for 1 cost. Replaces itself. You get the Ranger trait. If that's something you really need, this is a perfectly fine way to get it. But not much else to say about this card. It just kind of exists. It does something without much cost, but nothing exceptional. I guess it probably enables some deck somewhere. I wouldn't expect to see this very commonly. The Free Peoples, 5 cost, play only if the characters you control have a total of at least 9 different traits among them. Ready each character in play until the end of the phase. Each character you control gets +1 willpower. Okay, so you quest with all your characters, then you play this assuming you've met the requirement, and they all get +1 willpower, and they're all ready to attack or battle. That's a very good effect. How often are you going to be able to meet that requirement? It's a neutral card that helps you pay for it. Well, given that that requirement is not going to be met by very many hero combinations, if any, you have to get this set up with allies, and you have to have the 5 resources available. And you have to have the situation where it's strong, where you're questing for a lot, and you're needing to attack or battle. This is a late game card, and therefore you are unhappy when you draw this card in the early game, which means you may not want to run 3 of them. However, in this situation where it's useful, it could be very, very useful. Even game winning, that's the strongest of the readying effects in the game. There's Grim Resolve, which just readies everyone. There's that other Monosphere Leadership card that readies all your allies. There's a card that I think readies your Rohan characters. This is the strongest out of all of them, with the steepest requirements. It's a late game card. You might run it in certain decks, but not 3 of. But man, you're going to be sad when you draw it early. It's just going to sit there for a while. Could help to overcome a specific challenge though, given its dual usage. A lot of quests have, the difficulty comes from the fact that you have to quest and battle, and that's hard to do. That's hard to build a deck to do. This can help with that, because it allows you to quest and battle. Quest more effectively and then battle in the same turn. So it could help with that specific challenge, and therefore may have a use even in a very good deck. But you know, you're going to be sad when you draw it early, because it's a late game card, and I would beware of playing 3 of this for that reason. So the highlights of this adventure pack for me are Keep Watch and Rider of Rohan, which I consider one of the best cards to come out this cycle. And Free Peoples probably has a use as well. The other cards are relatively forgettable for me. In fact, I probably will forget them, to my own detriment perhaps. But Rider of Rohan, that's a great card. Keep Watch is pretty good, and Free People's got a use. The Free People's has a use. So thanks for watching.